Hey everyone, this here is Aces Fool with your host, Craig Guy Sr., coming at you this evening. We're going to talk a little bit about understanding the law and self-defense and why it's important. But first, this video is being brought to you by Butler's Fitness Evolution, butlersfitness.com for all your personal training, tactical, and dietary needs. Most people would say that they have the inalienable God-given right to defend themselves. And I would venture to say that if you spoke to 100 people, all 100 people in some capacity would say absolutely they have the right to defend themselves. But what I'm going to try to touch on this video is get you to think outside that box and maybe entice you to do some research in your local jurisdictions, because every state has different laws and how they interpret things and all. And dealing with self-defense, right? A lot of people say, well, the law is the law. That's the way it's written. And I would say it's really more of the interpretation. And the reason why I say it that way is that we'll talk about the stay-at-home mandates and the mask mandates and things like that, which have been challenged in court by several different states, challenging the governors and their politicians on whether they're constitutional or not. Well, some states have said that they infringe on the Constitution, and some states have said that they do not. So the legalities of things and the law is interpreted very similarly. How can two judges look at the same guidelines and the same laws, and one judges this way and one judges that way? Same thing can happen in self-defense, right? So it's not always cut and dry, and the law may be the law, but it depends on which court of law you're standing in and the interpretation of it, all right? What you want to look at is, when you're talking about self-defense, is there's three elements that I would say that comes into play here. One, the intent of the individual or the attackers. Two, the threat. And the third is the threat imminent. And what I mean by that is, if someone's standing there saying, I'm going to bust your head, and they're empty-handed, you're both empty-handed, and we're having a verbal confrontation, well, do they have the threat at that point to carry out to bust your head with something, whatever, if they're standing there empty-handed? So how much force can you meet, and how much use of force can you use against someone in that capacity? I'll talk about Maryland and Virginia for a minute. They're right across the river from each other. However, I'm retired law enforcement from Maryland, and now I live in Virginia. Give you some subtle differences is that in the state of Virginia, you can open carry a firearm being 18 years of age or older. You don't need a gun permit. In Maryland, you must obtain a gun permit in order to carry the firearm, right? So one difference right there in knowing and crossing the state lines on what you can and cannot do. The other factors that come into play are, in Maryland, you have the duty to retreat. So if you're confronted and you have the ability to escape, or could have escaped or could have gotten out of that situation, you have the duty to retreat in the state of Maryland. Well, in the state of Virginia, it is a stand your ground state. And we're talking about outside the home right now. So if you're involved in an altercation outside your home, again, in Maryland, you have the duty to retreat if you possibly can. In Virginia, you have your stand your ground law, which you don't necessarily have to retreat. But again, any decision that you make in dealing with self-defense is more than likely going to be split second, and muscle memory is going to kick in. Are you going to have those valuable minutes, seconds to think about the consequences and things if your life is in danger or one of your family members is in danger? Continuing with the comparison, you have the Castle Doctrine, protecting your domicile, protecting your home, right? Again, a lot of similarities between the two states is that, yes, you are legally obligated or can protect your home. Someone kicks in your front door, they're coming in, especially if they're there to do bodily harm or injury, or they're carrying weapons. Well, you know where your use of force is going there. It's going to escalate very quickly, and without hesitation, you're going to go into protector mode, I would hope, right? And also, you know, but the difference is that if someone breaks in your home and they're grabbing a TV and they're heading back out the door with it, and you start shooting at the individual, whatever, then you get into that gray area. You know, what was the intent? What was the threat? And what was the imminent threat from? Were they just coming in to steal property? And again, these are hypotheticals. These are things, and I know what I would do if someone broke in my home. So this is getting the wheel spinning on getting you thinking outside the box, so to speak, right? In Virginia, of course, the Castle Doctrine is almost reads the same way, is that you have the right to protect your property and especially, you know, any threat of life or anything. Absolutely. But again, there's some very interesting cases about to come up that we've had during the riots and all, and I won't get into all that. That's going to challenge case law, that probably end up changing case law. And what you want to be mindful of in today's world, that almost everything is being recorded. There's a video camera, there's somewhere, somebody's documenting this. If you're out in the middle of the street getting ready to have an altercation, especially in shopping centers and other places, you can best bet that the minute things break out, people don't look to assist, they look to record, right? They look to capitalize on that moment as opposed to stepping in and saying, wait a minute, this probably isn't what should be happening. So understanding the nuances of your jurisdictional laws are very important. You can pretty much just about Google anything, right, and find out what your laws and things are. So that's part of the self-defense. That's part of your survival awareness. That is part of educating yourself and learning something new on what really does the law say in your respective states, right? Because the last thing you want to be is sitting in handcuffs thinking that you were justified taking certain action, and come to find out that maybe you weren't as clear as you thought you were, right? Excuse me. And then you want to think about going back to the video and things. There's always cameras and things around, and sometimes that's a plus for someone, and sometimes that's a minus depending on the circumstances and how you look at it. And then you're getting charged, or you are saying, look, I had self-defense. You know, there's three ways I look at this. You have the court of opinion, right? Everybody watches these videos and things, and they formulate an opinion. Whether they disclose or not is irrelevant. I see a lot of back and forth on Facebook and things. Some heated, you can tell. And then, of course, there's the court of social justice right now with everything that's going on in the country. And then there's the law itself, right? And depending on the state and the jurisdiction, you know, the district attorneys and the state's attorneys and their interpretation of things, you may not be charged with anything at all, or you could be facing murder charges. Basically, my rule of thumb is that if you have to take physical action against someone and you have deemed a threat and you have subdued the threat, then you stop your use of force, right? Because you've knocked this person unconscious, you've taken the appropriate action, and you continue to pound or kick them in the face or you know, jump up on top of them, and this person was knocked out a long time ago. You got to be conscious of that. Now you're probably saying, well, Craig, I don't really necessarily agree with you because, hey, I'm going to do what I feel is necessary. Well, I get it. I understand that, just like I would as well. But understand, for every action is a reaction, and for every reaction is a consequence. So you have to be in that mode and in that mindset to understand the law of your jurisdiction, and my wife's giving me my time keeping there. Understanding your law in the jurisdiction that you live in. Educate yourself. Don't put yourself in a no-win situation. The two folks in St. Louis a while back came out with firearms in their hand, and originally they were charged, and then they turned around and we talked about the Castle Doctrine, and basically those charges were kicked to the curb. You got to understand, some of those people that recently have been elected in office, that some of your lawmakers don't necessarily see the world the same way that a lot of people do. One of them spoke about the burning and the looting and things and said, well, they were just trying to maybe get some bread or something. Well, I don't think looting Macy's, you're going to find any bread or anything to eat there. But and I point that out because that's the people that are going to be potentially making laws in the future. Just like here in Virginia, we just had quite a few new gun laws go into play 1 July, right? And, they had a gun rally and all that type of stuff, and 20-some thousand people showed up to it, and the lawmakers cared less. They went ahead and proceeded with the changes to the law. I can assure you, as we move forward with what's happening in this country, that self-defense laws and gun laws are going to continue to change. They're going to become more stringent. No one's going to give things back. No one's going to say, oh, that's okay to do this or do that. They're going to continue because they think that the more stringent things are, that the more they're protecting people. But in the end, you and I know that a lot of times the laws only hinder the lawful citizens, right? So just thinking outside the box, wanted to put my thoughts out there. Understanding the law and self-defense, know it, learn it, educate on it. Yes, you have the right to defend yourself, but at the same time, understand how far you can go or how far you're willing to go if necessary, right? And, it goes along with the video I said about learning some basic self-defense. I've still, you still should do that, but educate yourself as well. Don't put yourself in a no-win situation. There's a lot of other things I could say on this. I don't know all the laws in every state, right? I'm not an attorney. I'm not a judge, and that's a disclaimer, right? So if you get yourself in trouble, don't go into the courtroom and say, I'm going to would like to submit Exhibit A, Craig Guy Sr.'s podcast says I'm clear and free, right? Because I certainly don't have the authority to do that. This is about getting the wheels spinning, educating yourself, knowing some subtle differences from state to state, and making sure that if you have to take action, that you're well within the boundaries and the guidelines of the laws of your jurisdiction, and protect your family, protect yourself, but at the same time, don't put yourself in a no-win situation. And with that, I'm going to sign out. Everyone stay safe. I appreciate the support. The subscriber numbers are still growing, and who knows what tomorrow brings. And that clock's still not working. I got my two folks over here liking what we're saying. So I appreciate y'all out there, and be safe. And with that, I'm signing out.